This is the Week in Sustainability from Sustain.Life. It's where our team of sustainability experts and practitioners share commentary to keep you up to date on developing stories and news.
Hi, I'm Constance, the Director of Sustainability at Sustain.Life.
And I am Hannah Soksky, Sustainability Data Analyst at Sustain.Life. How are you this week, Constance?
I'm doing well. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing well.
Great. Let's get started. This week, the U.S. Department of the Interior's Bureau of Reclamation has laid out some options for future water distribution from the Colorado River in response to what they're calling a unprecedented water shortage in the reservoirs that are feeding the river. So that would be like Lake Mead and Lake Powell. We know that around 40 million people rely on Colorado River water. And there are 7 states who have a say in the agreements about water withdrawals from the river. And it's divided into the upper basin, which is Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah. And then there's the lower basin, which is Nevada, Arizona, and California. And those are really the 3 states in question here. And so these 7 states were supposed to come to an agreement around summer of last year. They failed to do it. And then finally, in January of this year, they came up with 2 competing proposals, one from California and one from the 6 other states.
Oh, okay. So what is California asking for that is not included in the other proposal?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the proportional cuts that the 6 state recommended would result in California farmers ending up with the biggest water cuts. And it would also interfere with water rights, which has always been a discussion around the Colorado River water. And those water rights go back more than a century. And so obviously California doesn't want to give those up. So they proposed larger cuts to Arizona because Arizona rates the lowest on water rights seniority out of all the states.
Okay. Well, yeah, whatever state ends up with the biggest cuts is going to have a disagreement with the plan. But is that the only trade-off we're looking at? Did the Bureau of Reclamation look into other alternatives?
Yeah, they did. So they actually came up with 3 different options. And the first one is basically no action at all after the current guidelines expire in 2026. And that is the worst option of all of them, because essentially the river would fall below the threshold that's needed to continue producing hydropower from both the Hoover and the Grand Canyon dams. And that provides power to 8 states. So pretty critical. And it would also put 30 tribal nations at severe water risk. So that is the no action option, which obviously sounds pretty bad. And then the second option is the one that would favor California, because they are the most senior user and hold those water rights. And that means Arizona would take the biggest hit. But I also want to be clear here that it's not a benefit to all of California. The water would go to farmlands that supply produce to pretty much the whole country. So that's the Central Valley, the Imperial Valley, and so on. Um, Whereas Los Angeles would face cuts, just as bad as the cuts that Phoenix would face, for instance. And then the third option is to just equally distribute the cuts between the lower basin states. And so, just to put it into perspective, we're talking about 2 million acre feet of water per year that would be cut, which is about 650 billion gallons of water.
So that third plan would totally ignore California's existing water rights. Do we have a sense of, would we expect to see legal challenge to that? And is there a preference that we sense from the federal government on any of these plans?
Yeah, so absolutely yes to legal challenges. They always seem to be looming. And with regard to government preference, there isn't a public position right now, but they did say they're not advocating for just cutting off the water to Los Angeles and Phoenix, just for the sake of preserving California's water rights. So the next step is actually to open this up to public comment. There'll be a 45-day period for that. And then Secretary Holland is expected to choose this summer, and then we should see a final version maybe around August.
Okay. Well, I really love seeing what comes out of public comment periods and really excited to see what Deb Holland's decision ends up being. But while we're sort of thinking about California, haven't they had a crazy record breaking year in terms of snowfall and rainfall? Does that does that shape their situation right now at all?
Yeah, it alleviated it a little bit, but unfortunately not very much. Every little bit helps, but this drought has been going on for over 2 decades. And so 1 year of record precipitation just can't make up for all that. So I think no matter which option is ultimately selected, it's just not a good situation overall. And it should really make everyone think about how we manage water.
Right? Yeah. There's not a solution that doesn't really include just overall cutting down water use.
Yeah.
Um, since agriculture is such a massive pressure on California's water use, is there validity to more specifically targeting farmers through like a financial incentive, something other than overall cuts?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that did come up to pay farmers not to plant certain water intensive crops. And then the Biden administration has also allocated billions of dollars to drought response and to water efficiency. But, to be honest, the price of water, including residential water, just doesn't reflect how precious and how at risk this resource is. So it needs to get to a point where, the water price makes people think about watering lawns or having swimming pools, and water intensive products and services should reflect the cost of, the true cost of water too. And then ultimately, low cost of water now just means that eventually we'll be left with mandatory restrictions, like, the ones we've seen in South Africa recently, for instance. And no one likes those. So we should really think about what activities now will change individual behaviors and create business motivators in the long run.
Yeah, I completely agree. We sort of generally are long overdue for a real reframing and just our relationship to water, and water prices can absolutely draw attention to what we're doing that uses a lot of water. Sometimes I get a little bit nervous when we talk about specifically residential water use prices increasing just from an environmental justice lens. But before we get to those kinds of measures, it sounds like there's just a ton of work to be done in terms of agricultural efficiency. What are our options?
Yeah, I think these are all really good points. So improved irrigation practices and crop collection, which you kind of alluded to, those two alone would make a huge difference. And then we look at gray water use. It still seems to be in its infancy, and it's kind of a very logical next step. I really love also the point you brought up about environmental justice. And there was just another article I came across last night that talks about, when we analyze water consumption by economic status in society, it just provides a whole different picture. Then, it's not just about water access or water quality. It's quite evident that wealthy people use a lot more water than everyone else. So something to keep in mind. And I wish we had more time to dive into all the related topics, like the massive amounts of water that are used in animal agriculture and food waste, and, growing feed crops like alfalfa in deserts just to export them, and just so many other water related topics.
No, we never have enough time for everything. I'm so glad you brought up gray water. There is a case study from a few years ago that showed that San Antonio, Texas, of all places, was growing in population, but staying really consistently consistent in their water use. And it was all around their gray water strategy. And they were just massively impressive in the space. But we will have to wait until August to really figure out what the final decision is in California and the 6 states involved in the Colorado River Basin. But when it comes out, we'll cover it here.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. But thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next week for more news in sustainability.
Sustain.Life is a sustainability management SaaS platform with deep carbon expertise that helps future-proof small and medium-sized enterprises by taking climate action. Go to Sustain.Life to learn more. Thanks for listening and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week.